outsourcing work has been both the source of some of the greatest satisfaction and frustration in our career with Mark. Get it right and it's like magic. You trade some money for some work being done better than you would have done it, and it just runs perfectly. Get it wrong and it can wreck your business. It's especially true when you're outsourcing SEO, where unrepairable damage can be done by shitty, unscrupulous providers, which is why outsourcing SEO is such a challenging task. So in today's episode, Mark and I are going to give you some of our best tips to outsource all or some of the SEO work you're doing. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Authority Hacker podcast. Today I am with probably the most qualified person to talk about today's topic. Probably not the most. Let's not exaggerate, Mark, but one very qualified person to talk about this topic. We're gonna be talking about outsourcing SEO, and I'm gonna be with Mark, my co-founder. We have had an agency that we started like 10 years ago now. I hate saying 10 years ago. I feel like so old. I don't know how you feel about that, Mark.
You are old now.
Shut up. Anyway. We ran for 4.5 years, probably 2 years too long to be honest for my liking. I think I wish we transitioned to authority sites a little bit earlier. But it is what it is, and you make mistakes, and so we can share the mistakes, and so you don't make them. I will say we got a crap ton of experience working on all sorts of different sites and all sorts of different situations with all sorts of different people. And I think I don't know how many clients we worked for in total, probably like 300 several
plus
hundreds
over the four and a bit years. We just got such a broad range of experiences, good and bad, and I think that makes us especially qualified to really talk about this, because we've been on that side of the fence, and also through our authority sites, through outsourcing various pieces of work, through working with agencies, working with freelancers, hiring people. We've seen it from both ends of the spectrum. So hopefully we can give some good insights here.
I must say it was fun, working on 99 designs or Flipper, for example. We used to do SEO for that. I had the analytics, etc. I could check everything. It was really educational. It's not what I prefer doing for work, but I understand that these few years were quite useful. Still wish we transitioned maybe a year or two earlier.
For sure.
I'm not gonna say that, but yeah. So let's talk about outsourcing SEO, because I think a lot of people who listen to this, they either have agencies and they can take the feedback, or they are looking to outsource some SEO work. Like a lot of authority site owners want to outsource link building, for example. I think that's a big one. But even content creation and all these things, a lot of things will apply to that as well. And I think there's a lot of nuance and there's also a lot of bullshit in this area. And I think I want to talk about this because when I see some sales pitches, etc., I go crazy. So I think it's gonna be an interesting one. But before we do that, I think what's gonna be even more interesting is when people click on the like button below if they are watching on YouTube. I saw a correlation study that says that people that click on the like button actually rank high on Google, so people should probably do that. And if you subscribe, then it's you get the featured snippet, so probably should do that. But let's get going. By the way, we also have the podcast on the audio platforms. So if you are on Spotify, if you're on iTunes, if you're on SoundCloud, if you're on Google Podcasts or any other podcast platform, you can just search for the Authority Hacker podcast, and you can get the audio version of this podcast, which can be convenient to listen to in your car or something like that.
If you are on iTunes, you're probably very rich because you have a time machine, isn't it? Apple Podcast now?
Yeah, it's Apple Podcast, but it's just everyone calls it iTunes anyway. But it's called Podcasts on the iPhone, actually, not even Apple Podcast.
Yeah.
Or you have a very old Mac or iPod Touch or whatever. Anyway, let's get started with this. I'll let you pick the first point, actually.
So the first point is, don't hire someone or an agency to solve SEO and to go away and do SEO while you just focus on your business. Because SEO, it's so ingrained into everything you do. Imagine if we at authorityhacker.com just hired an SEO agency. Would they be able to capture our voice and the way we communicate in this podcast? Would they be able to reproduce it? Would they be able to reach out to people in the industry that we know and say, hey, can you link to us? We're some random SEO agency. No. And the same apply. It's not just because we're in internet marketing that's the case. It's because SEO, it's so ingrained into everything that a company is doing. It's very hard to outsource it all completely. And even if you find an agency who's very, very good at doing it, and there are those out there, and is willing to get very deeply involved and can just magically figure out everything you need to know. There's this kind of motivation from an agency's perspective. Like think about what that is. It is to get you to the next month so you're just happy enough, right? It's not to transform your business from 0 to $10 million a month, because you're just paying them like in most cases, unless they're on a kind of like reward basis, in most cases you're paying them a flat fee. Their motivation is to get paid, is to do just enough to keep you satisfied, to show you some promise, to show you some results, to prove that what they're doing is worthwhile, and so that they will keep paying month after month. Imagine it from their perspective, right? They have 50 clients. And they have a different budget for each client maybe, and they're going to look at each client, see how much results is this one getting, how much results is this one getting, how much results is this one getting. And if one client's lagging behind and they're like, oh, I'm not so happy, why am I getting results, why is my traffic going down, they'll put more effort in there. But that's to the detriment of the other clients who are like, oh, they're fine, we don't have to worry about them, we don't have to work so hard this month, we'll just kind of keep them coasting along. So you end up, by outsourcing SEO this way, you end up kind of going towards this weird kind of okay-ish equilibrium.
It's the portfolio effect, right? They try to balance it out.
Which can be good or it can be kind of okay, but it's never going to transform your business. It's never going to really get you to like an amazing growth level. It's just going to kind of be all right. And that's why I think fundamentally SEO should be something which is a core competency, which is part of your business. Sure, you can still hire people to help you do parts of it, but if you just think you can not learn it, not understand it, not have to worry about it, and just get someone else to do it, that's not really the case.
Yeah, I think there's two issues that you did there. So the first one is essentially you become part of a portfolio, which is all the clients that they're managing. And their goal is to essentially drive the most value through the portfolio, which doesn't mean it's always the best for your individual business, because you're only one point in like many points in a graph, and they just try to average it up. So it's very hard to like get aggressive growth from a company, from an agency. Rather, they will be really good at fixing the low-hanging fruits, identifying like things that have worked for them in the past, and to that extent, I think it's great. If there's something that you're not good at, especially if it's SEO, I think you will get a lot of benefits, especially in the first few months, usually, because they identify these low-hanging fruits, etc. So usually you work with an agency and you get like nice growth at the beginning, and it kind of like slowly plateaus as they have addressed all the low-hanging fruits that they have experience with.
It's also because SEO is kind of this like art more than a science sometimes, and a lot of clients are a bit skeptical of it. I was a bit skeptical of an agency's ability to perform. So they're really motivated in that first three to 6 months. To really get some low-hanging fruit quick wins and prove that what they're doing is worthwhile, so they can say, hey, look, since you hired us, we've increased traffic by 20% or whatever. But I think in reality, and it's just because no SEO has been done or very little has been done before, that it's quite easy to come in for anyone, even with a basic amount of experience, to come in and just say like, oh, let's tweak a few things here and there, and it's going to start, working a little bit. It's like if you go outside in the rain, the 10 worst rain jackets in the world are going to keep you more dry than just going out in a t-shirt kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I still think there's value. It's just like we have a lot of friends that do that, right? They hire an agency and then they just hire for like 6 months, and then they just get the low-hanging fruits, and maybe sometimes they swap because another agency might have like some other competencies that they can bring, etc. But I think the other point that you made that I wanted to address as well is that you can't just get SEO done without giving it any mind share. You need to, it's like, if your competitors actually care about this, it's like we were discussing about this for link building. We were looking at like some link building stuff for us, and we identified opportunities, but like our competitors like are doing it at their name. They're like the face of the website, and they are the guys that actually do it, etc. And we had discussion like if we just even get someone from our staff to do this, it's not gonna get nearly the same effect as we would get if we actually got involved ourselves, gave it some mindshare, and we'd probably like be able to get on more prestigious places and get these big links that move the needle, etc. Even if it's like some degree of involvement. So I think the idea of like I can just give you a pile of money and that's it, it's done, I don't need to think about it, doesn't work very often, and there's a lot of bad stories that come from these things, and often that also translates into a lighter hiring process for the people that do that, and then you will end up with less good people that will promise you a lot of things, are really good at selling but not necessarily really good at delivering, and it's a bit risky. So that's the two things. Basically, you can't just do SEO without mindshare, and you become part of a portfolio of clients where the agency wants the overall portfolio to go up, not just your individual company. And sometimes it means if you're doing well, if you're on top of the portfolio, they might try to push up the people that are at the bottom instead of trying to actually push you up, which is why achieving aggressive growth with an agency is often complicated, unless you agree on deliverables and not results, which I think is a big one as well. You can agree, instead of saying, I want to rank up in Google, you can agree, I want 50 guest posts. And then, well, then it's just up to you to see like what the quality of the guest posts are. But if you agree on 50 guest posts, you will most likely get 50 guest posts. And then you take essentially the strategy part on the inside of your company and you just outsource the pieces of work, which tends to be my preferred way of doing things these days. And I don't think
it still has other issues with like quality control and stuff. So
we're gonna get there.
It's not something you can completely outsource the mindshare part of it.
So because of that, like the way I pick a service provider as an agency or like or any service provider for like link building, for example, it works very much on like the interpersonal level for me. So I found that the service providers that we worked with where I could not get a good connection, we rarely were successful in the projects. But the people that could make the deadlines and we could have regular calls and almost act as if they were part of our team, like they're on our Slack and we chat with them, etc. It works a lot better than like when we keep the conversation to email and it's very distant and we agree to only talk once a month or something. Like I've quite struggled with that because it's like I just end up getting what they decide and not what I want, and I'm losing control basically, and for me that has worked better. So I tend to really care about interpersonal connection. I care about people making deadlines and making calls, and overall just like having, it's a weird one, it's like a gut feeling basically, and like also them being technical enough, like I can have a technical discussion with them and they don't contradict themselves, which a lot of providers will do, and you can catch them really quickly when you get a bit technical.
For me, it's very much they have to call things as it is. I get very anxious around people that overhype things and kind of like aren't accurate in how they're assessing or just describing things.
Salespeople, like salespeople for agencies.
Basically,
oh god, yeah. It's like I shake my hand. It's like, you know, and even software companies do that, right? For example, like I remember I got a sales call with Market News, which is like a very expensive keyword tool, basically. And same, they try to bullshit me with their AI stuff, etc., without really telling me how stuff works, etc. I'm like, guys, I just like give me the tool. Like I'm pretty sure I'll be able to use this. Let me use this, and I'll just tell you how it actually works and where the numbers come from. And it's like, it's so frustrating when people are like that.
Yeah.
But I think it works because otherwise they wouldn't do it. So some people get convinced. But I think the people that get convinced are the people that try to outsource everything without thinking. It's kind of like the same population, which tends to be like higher level CEOs that don't really want to care about the tech stuff, etc., and end up wasting often a lot of money.
I think it's more, it's like a different part of a sales cycle kind of thing. So, you know, if someone doesn't know they need SEO, telling them about, you know, data algorithms or whatever is like, it's useless. You need to like sell them on the dream and like, hey, you can increase your leads and and you know, telling people these kind of examples and stories and all that. Versus us, like maybe we're just a bit more.
We're just jaded as fuck.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably part of it as well. We are pretty jaded, having seen just how this industry really works in many cases.
I agree, and I think being jaded. Let's talk about something that a lot of people maybe not realizing is that the person you're talking to is not the person doing the work. At pretty much 99%, they might be like overseeing it, checking it once a week type thing. But they're going to outsource it, and they're going to outsource it to some people that you wish did not touch anything on your business sometimes, and you will not be happy. And basically that's how this works, right? They charge you Western prices, and then they might outsource in the Philippines. I'm not saying everyone in the Philippines is bad, by the way. A lot of people are really good in the Philippines. But they might outsource to teams that are like less they haven't talked to you, so they don't get this first-hand understanding of your project, of your business, etc. And they're gonna start writing articles for guest posts, so like they will start writing blog content, or they will start making changes to your title tags, or they will start doing these things and essentially tweaking physical things that you can see on your business, without having the level of understanding of what you actually asked your project manager or the person that sold to you. And I think that is often a problem, and you will very often find a disconnection between what you agreed on with the person you talk to and what actually gets done. And I think, to me, that is the main problem with outsourcing to people. It's like, I get on the phone, we'll agree and we'll be friends, and I'll be like, well, that sounds great, I think that's a good deal, etc. And then the execution of things will just be off, like the title tag will be written in like there will be 5 exclamation marks at the end. It's just not the style we'd want to have. Or like an article will be like very, very generic. We agreed like they would do a guest post on a DR80 site, and I find this DR80 site is just a guest post farm that's still high DR and happens, but it's kind of shit. And I think it's a huge problem, and I think very often you get what you pay for as well here, and as you start realizing the value of money, and very often you don't get what you pay for. Very often you pay a lot and you get shit work anyway, and so this is what the one thing that scares me the most. It's like I often agree with people, but I rarely end up getting what I want, mostly because the work is passed to someone, and sometimes outsourced to other companies, etc., and it just ends up being a giant chain. When we saw guest posts, right, we were getting orders that were like forced level orders from other agencies.
Yeah,
right?
So I mean, 5, 6, 7 years ago now, we did at one point up to 1,000 guest posts a month in our agency, and the majority of our clients were other agencies. Some of them who were like our clients were clients for another client who was client for the website itself. So there was like 2 people between the client and us taking a cut. And then no one further up the chain knew how far this was being outsourced, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
Not just that, but information, like the information we were getting from these agencies was like nothing. Like I'm sure like they had like a really big meeting with the initial client, etc. Like, we did it for big brands, and there was like a lot of agreements, etc. And then when we were getting like essentially like 3 links down the road, we were just getting, hey, we want 5 guest posts on the R60 plus sites. And it's like, you can see how the information goes from like quite refined to like shittier and shittier as it gets repeated and people lose information. And that's the part where you don't get what you want as a client. And it's like, I don't blame us, because honestly, we were getting so little information, and honestly, a lot of these agencies didn't give a shit about giving us more information anyway. And that's the problem. It's like, if it was on one of my sites, I would get annoyed eventually. Like, it's like, if I get results, I'll probably like still do it for a while, but I'd be looking for other solutions because of that, I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I expect that work done in this space is going to be outsourced to some level. So if I care about quality, I'm very clear in asking, who's going to perform each of these tasks, who in your team. And, it can be quite obvious sometimes if it's been farmed out, especially with something like content. If there's inconsistencies there, it's the way someone writes is very kind of personal to them, and you can often tell when it's been farmed out elsewhere. But it's unfortunately a very common thing, especially, again, with content. You have a writer who does great for a few months, and then it's like, oh, can't be bothered anymore. Let's farm it out to someone half the price and just keep the money for no work type. And
that's the problem as well with outsourced work, is it gets passed on to many different people. So you might be talking to the same person, but that person passes the work on to like a new team every week or something. Like it changes very often, and you will find massive variations in quality, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. And so it's also a problem. Like it's like you need to understand, like I would ask who's doing the work, when is it done, can I interact directly with the people writing the articles, that kind of stuff. Like, can I give them direct feedback? Are they gonna be stuck to my account, and am I gonna get the same person, or is it just variable, etc.? And usually that's where you'll find the big price differences, like for the same deliverable, which you try to be like, I'm a usually I'd save money on a lot of things. Like I have like a $5 t-shirt right now. But it's one of these things where you will see that, the cheaper people will, like, they have to cut corners to actually make the prices that they're charging. And the problem with SEO is it's kind of like a zero-sum game, right? It's like, in the end, if your competitor is trying harder, it doesn't matter how much you spend. If they outrank you, they just get more of the traffic, and so underspending in SEO is sometimes a mistake, So anything else on this point, or you want to take the next one?
No. So the next one is someone from your hometown will not necessarily do a better job. A lot of tends to be older people, more of traditional businesses. They want to work maybe because they fear the problem in the previous point. They want to meet that person and know them and really get a sense of that individual and whether they're going to be good to do business with. And while that feels nice, and it can be at a level of comfort and reassurance that you can at any time, go into their office and complain if something goes wrong. Ultimately, that London or Manhattan office is expensive, and you're going to be paying for the higher. You're going to be paying for that, and not only the fixed costs, but their higher wages in those places through higher costs in your SEO. Or if you're getting billed the same amount, then you're going to get less done because they have to make money somewhere. And it's just a fact. It's just a fact of this industry that it's very easy to do a lot of work remotely. I have a friend who has an agency, works for local businesses in the US, and he lives in Europe, but nobody knows that because he pretends that he has a US office with like a phone number and is like always making sure to like respond during working hours in the US and all that kind of stuff, because these types of clients that he works for, that's something that's important to them. But does it mean that the quality of the work is better or worse? Like, not always. There's not really I don't think a very strong correlation between that. Where I live in Edinburgh in Scotland, I've had a look at marketing agencies, SEOs and stuff in the space, just kind of like out of curiosity. And honestly, like, it doesn't look like they really know what they're doing. And why should it? Why should where you live make a difference to your ability to do SEO?
Yeah. So would you, based on that logic, would you outsource all your SEO work to India?
No, because I think there's definitely a stereotype that Indian SEOs are bad. I think
there's some good ones.
I think that's born out of the fact that everyone who has a website gets like 4 emails a day from an Indian SEO company, and I think most of them probably are not that great. People doing this. Certainly, we've hired not just SEO, but like ads people and stuff from India in the past. And like
we've hired, some content on Authority Hacker is written by an Indian writer that we used a while ago. Actually, really good. Yeah. He quit. Actually, I wish we still had him. So, so yeah. So
the sort of learning from this is that it's more about your quality control purposes. Be that assessing agencies, or if you're hiring someone, a writer in house. How you screen those, how you work with them, how you manage them, how you check quality. That's much more important than the country someone's based in. Of course, if they're in Australia and it's like hard to communicate time zones and stuff, it can be logistically a bit challenging or whatever.
Yeah.
But in general, we've had a lot of success hiring and outsourcing from cheaper countries.
So you say that's what people should do, right?
Yeah, I want to caveat that. I mean, yes, but I want to caveat that by saying don't just go hire the first person that applies. You will probably get more worse people applying from these places. So you have to screen harder in order to find the good people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The designer we use as well on Authority Hacker, for example, and some other sites is from Serbia as well. So it's like it works well. It's perfect, and he's really good. He's better than many UK designers I work with. so yeah, I think you can, but you also need a stronger critical sense towards the work, because less developed places have like less developed marketplaces. And it's okay. It's like, when the market was at the same stage in developed countries, it looked the same as well. So you just need to like have a strong filtering effect. But like essentially the ones in these countries that are like well internationalized, speak good English, read English content to educate themselves, etc., can be extremely good value. And it tends to be the kind of service providers that we hire for ourselves, provided we put a really strong screening before we hire them. Let's talk about the price. It's a tricky one, right? Because pricing SEO, it's like, how long is a piece of string? It's like you can price it based on the value people get, or you can price it on the cost of factors. That's usually the two ways you price things. It's like, how much does it cost us to manufacture, and what percentage of profit margin do we apply on top, or like how much value does that bring to people? And SEO agencies or SEO service providers, they will do both, right? Some of them will be priced pretty aggressively because they're like, well, if you rank so high, and especially they will price you different for different agents for different industries because of that, because they can guesstimate how much value you will get from that and essentially charge you more for the same work. So it's a bit of a tricky one, and so that's why I tend to prefer working on deliverables, because I can make a list of things I'm going to get. And I'm like, okay, here's the list of things I'm getting, here's how much I'm paying, here's the detailed price per item. And then what I can do is I can literally take the same list of items without the prices and give it to other service providers and see how much they charge and get a feel for like what is the market price. And it's hard to tell you like, oh, you should pay $150 for a guest post and you should be paying like $50 for a skyscraper link. It's quite hard because I think, and it's something that I mentioned earlier, is how it's done. You can't just say a guest post, all guest posts are the same, right? You can't, like, some guest posts are done well with content that you're not ashamed to share on your social media, and some guest posts are made with spun content on sites that dropped on Google from the Medic update, and you probably don't want that link, and the content makes you feel a little bit ashamed if you were showing it to your employees or your clients, So there is a price to that, and I think that's why it's so hard to determine, am I paying a fair price for my SEO service or not? And it also depends on your tolerance to these things. Maybe you don't give a shit. Maybe you just want some links to rank and like you don't care. In this case, maybe like higher, like a lower price services are better. Or maybe you're trying to build a brand and you want to make sure that when people Google your brand, they don't find really shitty stuff and they don't call you out for cheating on Google and report you and do all these things, and you want some clean PR, which I would recommend if you're trying to build something a little bit bigger. And in this case, then the cheaper service providers will probably not make the cut, and you will probably need to spend more money, very often up to double the money that the budget providers would charge you. Anything on price?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, be very like careful, like what you're negotiating for exactly. I remember when we were running an agency, and rather than promising deliverables, although we did kind of have that, like in essence, what we were selling people was the dream of higher rankings and more traffic.
We had both. We had two services. We had one that was selling the links, and we had one that was selling consulting.
Yeah, so like most people in the consulting bracket, they were not technical people. They didn't know what they needed, so they needed us to tell them that, and they were essentially trusting us that we were going to get them more traffic and get them more leads and whatnot. And it was quite common that they would push back on price for something like that. And from our perspective, it's like, well, what are we going to do? Like, we quoted 3,000. He only wants to pay 2,000 a month, so we'll just give him $2,000 worth of stuff. But like they don't have in their mind that that I'm going to get less links, I'm going to not get as much consulting for that. They just went, I'm still going to get more traffic and more leads, but it's going to be less money, so that's a win.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like negotiating from ignorance kind of thing.
I mean, it just depends on your budget as well. I think you shouldn't overspend if you can't spend the money. But basically what we had is at the beginning of the month, I remember we had the list of clients and we had a list of activities we could do. We'd be like, okay, 1 hour consulting is like $100. A guest post is like $150. And I don't know, like a blog post is, 80 or 90. And we just like have all these items and we would take their budget And then we would just like assign items to the account and be like, okay, well, this account is gonna get 4 blog posts, it's gonna get 8 guest posts, it's gonna get 5 hours of consulting so we can fix their on page. And maybe we're gonna do a technical audit as well to make sure that they there's no crazy redirects, and we can maybe save some link juice for pages, etc. And then that's it. There's your $2,000 budget. And if you have 3,000, then we would put more items into that. And it was kind of like, when you go to a market and they ask you how much meat you want, and they just cut it out for you, or like it's kind of the same. So that's how most agencies seem to work. I remember we talked to Andrew, who is from Voltage SEO as well, and they work more or less the same. And I think a lot of like smaller SEO agencies work that way and will just give you what you pay for. So you can pay very little, you just get very little work. The question is like, how much do you need to be competitive, which is very hard to measure, because very often when you hire these kind of services, you're trying to catch up with competitors that have been doing SEO for years. So you tend to need some aggressive investment at the beginning, at least for the catch-up process, and then after that maybe you can maintain, etc. But unless they have some really good keyword strategy, or they can go around and find some better keywords, etc. But that's basically how prices work. Do you want to go for the next one?
Yeah, so the next one is reviews, and these sites that claim to kind of rank SEO agencies in performance, they're all bullshit.
We were number one in the UK at some point, It's like there was a site that put us number one in the UK.
I think it was it top SEOs or something like that.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me. But basically, there are these sites out there that the business model is they will. I mean, for us, it seemed almost random that you could get like ranked in this list of top international SEOs or top industry SEOs or whatever. And there's that if you go on some of their sites, not all of them, but some of their sites, they actually have the ability to apply, and then there's like a fee so that they will like consider it and this kind of thing. This is all like very, very sketchy. I think these sites kind of rank for best, I don't know,
SEO agency.
Best SEO agency in a city, or like best and then industry SEO, like I don't know, trying to think like best. Why can't I think of a single SEO industry? Best sunglasses SEO or whatever, and then they'll rank people who are the best at doing SEO in that industry. But it's completely fabricated. It's all bullshit.
They don't check anything. Yeah, like we were on some rankings and we heard nothing from them, or our clients heard nothing from them. So it's just a way to sell lead gen. So like they sell sponsored placements as well, and it's just like, hey, if you want to rank higher, you can just pay us $3,000 and we rank you higher. So they're just renting the page basically, like the same way a lot of SEOs do for local queries. Like they build a website, then they just charge like a dentist or a lawyer to put them on the page and get them some traffic. Essentially, that's the business model, and it's all bullshit. So if you're trying to hire a service, don't believe these. I like case studies. Like some of them in SEO, there are like we had an old one, but it's too old now. I would recommend you go check the competitors. Actually, some competitors have done new. I think Brandon has done one recently, and maybe Matthew Woodward or something, where they test like link building services, for example. And it's like, I think these I would trust when there's like they really went to buy the service and check it out, etc. I think this is cool. But these kind of like ranking sites, just no, don't trust them. And talking about link building, I think it's probably the scariest thing to outsource, although it's not as scary as it was once when there was no disavow tool. And you could get your site hammered by Penguin, but you could not disavow it, and you just had to wait for Google to let you back in, like, to rank again. You need to be a little bit careful, because there is a lot of lies and bullshit in selling links, and it's one of the things that pisses me off the most, right? Most people that we've criticized for as being link sellers, they're like, oh, you don't like PBNs and you don't like grey hat, etc. I'm like, I don't care. Grey hat, like PBNs are not illegal. You're not breaking the law. You're allowed to own a website and link to another website. It's completely fine. My problem is when service providers sell you a guest post for like $200, when it's actually just a post on their shitty PBN that actually market value around $40. And they will just change their marketing to charge you 4 or 5 times more. And we see some of our readers just ending up giving them way too much money for something that's just not worth what they paid for. And also they got lied to. It says like real guest posts, and then you get a link on the PBN, or you get a mention, and it's a link on a hacked website, and they just bought it on SAP, And that's my problem. And a lot of people will do that. And it's very hard to verify because when you talk to them, you will ask for samples or something, and they will show you real samples. It's kind of like designers. Designers do that a lot. They send you great samples, then you hire a designer. It's like, that's a lot worse than anything I saw in the samples. And link builders will do the same, and that's a bit of a problem. Also, a lot of people will say real outreach links, and then they will just buy the links, which, again, I don't mind if you buy links, but tell your clients you're buying links for them. Like, for example, I mean, a good example is Jason Malone we had on the podcast, right? He does pay for links, but he tells his clients when he pays for links. And you know what? I have no problem with that. It's like it's a reality of the market, and a lot of people do it. A lot of HPro members buy links, and it's fine. But what I don't like is when you think that you were completely clean, you pay the service, and then you've taken a risk that you're not aware of, and that annoys me a lot. And SEO providers do that a lot so that they can make more money and they can inflate their prices, so they lie to you. So be very careful with that.
I think a lot of the time when people are hiring these kind of services and there's a, we don't, it's all natural outreach, blah, blah, blah. There's maybe a bit of them that kind of doubts it, but they're just like, well, they're saying it's okay, so it must be okay. It's kind of like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. So I think that's definitely a factor there. What I will also say, as someone who at one point sold 1,000 links in a month, not selling links, but like providing that link building as a service, what would happen is that we very quickly built up a database of a few hundred sites who we had core relationships with core people, and we knew that we could get send any article of almost any quality as long as it wasn't to like a porn site or something, and we could spend between sort of like $10 and $30 for like the sponsored fee, and we could get a link for any client on that site. Now, when you have 200 sites that you can do this from, if you have one client who wants 50 links a month, then eventually you're going to need to like start doing actual outreach to get links for them. But for all these sort of small volume clients that are coming in and buying 5 links a month for 6 months or something, you can just use your database. Like, why spend the time doing the outreach, doing the hard manual work when you just go through this same database and just get easy, quick links from? And that is a reality of the link building outsourcing market, and it's something you have to be very, very careful of, because just because the numbers, the DR or whatever is good, and the site looks kind of old or whatever, seems to have traffic, if they're selling links for $20 and everybody is just like getting links from them, then you have to question whether that's a valuable link to have. And even that debate aside, is that what you're really paying for if they say they're manually outreaching for links and they're not?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's quite tricky. And the thing is that the lack of transparency annoys me. Not the processes. It's like a lot of people do that with their sites, but the lack of transparency is terrible. Pick the next point.
Next points are micromanaging. So this goes more for like the SEO agency, like they're doing it all for you kind of thing. The most common inquiry we got from clients over that time was, hey, I was checking my Google Analytics today and I saw traffic was down on this page by 10%. Or, hey, I was just checking the rank tracker and this keyword dropped 3 positions today. What's up? And, it's kind of born out of ignorance to an extent, but it's also, they want to make sure that you're on it and you're not letting anything slip. So they kind of try and micromanage you like that. Now, of course, when you're looking at one page or one keyword especially, they go up and down all the time. It's a competitive landscape, and we had templated answers to sort of explain why that happens, and we would try as much as we would try and get ahead of the situation and tell clients not to worry about that. They always did, and it took up some of our time to kind of have this conversation with them, and that was time that we couldn't spend doing their actual SEO, which would ironically help recover whatever situation had occurred. So there is an argument to say that you should be agreeing a check-in time or reporting time, that weekly, monthly, whatever, when you have a call, get reports, you check on their progress. But if you're looking at it every day, it's kind of, things go up and down, and they change so much, especially with rankings, that you're just gonna cause more problems than you solve by micromanaging them in this kind of way. And the same can kind of be said for if you're outsourcing content or link building, although I think there's a big difference there. I think content especially, you need to be like heavily micromanaging like the first sort of like 4, 5, 10 articles that a content producer or agency delivers for you, because that will determine, your feedback there will determine the quality of work you're getting back from them on the long run. And so if you don't do that properly there, then you'll end up getting shit work forever, basically. And it's very hard, after they've delivered 500 articles, to say, oh, they're all terrible. So you have to kind of get ahead of it there. But after things get going, then micromanaging can often cause more problems than you think it solves. Although it's nice to feel like you're keeping on top of someone or an agency, you're often just making the problem worse. So you have to be a little bit careful of that.
Yeah, I actually want to wrap this up now with one thing, which is I think and we're going to go back to the beginning of this podcast, you should be building an in-house team eventually. So you need a plan. I think agencies are great to get started at something you're not good at, that you've never done before. You get the low-hanging fruits for them, and you get a lot of education as well. I think if you hire an agency and you don't just get the value from the work they do, but from understanding how this process works, it brings you an initial experience. The problem is, as we mentioned earlier as well, you get kind of like a ceiling of mediocrity through the portfolio effect of them managing all their clients. And so it's very hard to get aggressive growth, etc. Like we have some friends that used to have agencies and couldn't get growth and then transitioned to in-house and got massive growth. Many people that we know. So I think when you have agencies, it's a good idea to make a plan to not have this going forever, but rather have a transition plan. So I like the idea of like having, like, for example, that's one thing we talked about for Toy Hack. I was thinking of like doing proper traditional PR. So I think it's a good idea to hire an agency for 1 or 2 years. And I like the idea of putting someone in charge for managing them and kind of like have them learn about the process, ask a lot of questions, really check the work, so you make sure you get good work. But at the same time, this person educates themselves about the process, whether that's Facebook ads, whether that's PR, anything like that. And what this person does is slowly take more and more of this work in-house and off the agency, and eventually you build an in-house team that can then push things in a much more tailored way for your business, and with the goal of growing your business, not the entire portfolio of clients. And I think that's how we've seen most people use agencies successfully. So they're a great way to get started with something, like if you want to try Facebook ads, if you want to try PR, if you want to like start link building, if you're not doing that yet, if you want to start content, all of that. It's a great way to get started. But eventually, I think that's the best way to handle this. So I would recommend that you make a plan to slowly transition in-house, build a core competency, and grow from there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's definitely a valid place for agencies, especially if you're just getting started. You don't know what you need. You need someone to kind of like establish the process, get things going. But I don't think that SEO or any of the subtopics around it are link building, content, technical SEO, etc., are things you can completely just outsource the mind share of. You have to take some ownership. You have to have your fingers in all the pies with it, at least to some extent. And yeah, just be very careful with who you're hiring in this industry, because it's not regulated. I don't necessarily think it should be regulated in the same way that like accountants or lawyers are. But there are a lot of people who are substandard. Let's put it that way.
All right. Any final words?
Nope.
All right, well, on this, remember, if you are watching this on YouTube, click on the like button below. As I said, there's a correlation study that says that you rank higher if you click on that. If you subscribe, that helps us a lot as well. And if you want to listen to this podcast on the audio platform, listen on any podcast platform, just look for Toy Hacker Podcast and you will find us there. We release a new podcast every Monday, so you will have another podcast in a week if you're listening on Monday. And if you come on Monday on our YouTube channel around 5 p.m. UK time, you will have us live actually answer your questions during the premiere of the podcast episode. So if you want to hang out, you can do that. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week. Have a good week. Bye.